Summer's finally here. The kids are out of school, so why not try out some free-range parenting, drop them off at the mall with $20 and settle down with a good book. But what should you read? How about the contemporary romance Check Me Out by Becca Wilhite? Wilhite is a mom and blogger just like you, and while Check Me Out isn't her first novel, it is her first after several years absent from the writing scene. According to her publisher, she's a happy mother of 4 and high school English teacher, both professions that make fertile ground for growing a spunky, lively writing style. So if you're bored at all the historical melodrama and looking for some fiction that gets you, then today's book is allegedly right up your alley. It's also an exciting day at the Mormon romance novel book review because it's this reviewer's conviction that contemporary young adult novels are some of the most important fiction an LDS author can write. For Mormon youth, the age between 18 and marriage is a spiritually turbulent span of years. They're a time for making hard choices, of meeting new people, of holding on to the things they believe while constantly learning that life is more complicated than it seems, and for many it can be a time of confusion, alienation, fear, and not a small amount of cynicism. So let's meet Greta, main character of Check Me Out and the representative of obnoxious, underemployed young people everywhere, and let's count the ways that she makes herself relatable to the struggling young adult. In the blurb for Check Me Out, it says the book contains a dash of Cyrano de Bergerac, a surprisingly literary reference for an LDS romance novel. Usually the well of English canon that Mormon authors have to draw from is the one they got in their English major at BYU, which might as well be called Studies in Dropping Out after 2 years, having 2 kids, and starting a series of YA princess novels after the ennui settles in. Zing. Suck it, the arts. But this is interesting because Cyrano de Bergerac is an old French play with a difficult theme. It confronts the uncomfortable idea that when it comes to love, we all say out loud that it's what's on the inside that counts, while none of us actually follow that axiom when confronted with someone who isn't so great on the outside. But unlike the titular Cyrano with his ugly nose, the romantic interest in Check Me Out is an unattractively overweight high school teacher named Will, who can't find a match despite his charm, wit, and good heart. The typical reader might assume that this subject matter, being so sensitive, and especially in a day when our society is trying so hard to shift to better ways of thinking about body image, might be handled with a light touch, but those readers are stupid, fat, pimply slobs. Will had been a chunky kid. Now he wasn't a kid anymore, and chunky didn't really do justice to his form. He was huge in the way nobody really wants to be. The tiny bistro table wasn't really big enough for 3, especially since one of the 3 was Will. I could go more into the romance plot and talk about how there's this whole thing where Will tries to win Greta's love by hiding his words behind a proxy handsome face, and how the big reveal shocks them all, and how Greta ultimately falls in love with Will's heart instead of his body, but honestly, screw Greta. She keeps bringing up his weight even though he doesn't, and I wish that she would go away and find the rich, muscle-bound, abusive man with a shrunken frontal cortex that she deserves. But here I am, a good portion of the way through this video, and I haven't even talked about the setting or plot, so let's do that. Greta works as a librarian in a town called Franklin, and she likes books. You wouldn't know it by the fact that she never reads, quotes, or references any author, even though she's the narrator and she has every opportunity to do so, but she is employed at a library, so I'm sure she gets a lot of reading done outside the story. I certainly won't accuse her of being one of those people that says she likes books, but when you ask her about the last one she read, she has to stop and think about it for a while and remember she reread Harry Potter last year and then goes back to scrolling through the Instagram hashtag #HotGuysReading. That would be mean. No, but really, she does love her library. That's one of the main plots of the novel. In Check Me Out, the stakes are set when Greta finds out that her beloved historic place of books may close due to budget cuts of the city council. But all hope is not lost, because among a box of old documents, she finds, oh wait, who cares, there's a cute boy that just walked in the library. Look at him, standing there, walking into the library, hot enough to roast marshmallows over, and asking where he can find some classic poetry so he can look sexy standing there reading it. Closing library, you say? Other parts of the plot, you say? We'll get to those never, because apparently the only thing that actually shakes Greta from her half-enthused attitude toward life is the idea of making some sweet, sweet card catalog entries with this man in front of her, file it under romance, completely fall out of the immersion of the story for a cheap cheap shot at. I know this is starting to sound like hyperbole, but Greta really is this shallow. The presence of a hot boy in the library, whatever his name was, changed the narrative from the story of a perfectly normal, if slightly bored young woman to a story that would fit well in an episode of Teen Girl Squad. And no, it wasn't just the one scene where she does it, because Hot Boy in the library asks her out, and soon he's also taking the roles of Hot Boy on a date, Hot Boy in the park, Hot Boy texting, and Hot Boy kissing, and Greta melts down into a puddle of bad prose every time he's somewhere within her field of vision. She turns into such a complete idiot that there is one point in the book where she receives a text from Will that confuses her because it appears to be advice about how someone likes orange juice and that someone would appreciate some orange juice. Will apologizes and says that the text was meant for someone else, and a few minutes later Hot Boy shows up with a cup of orange juice, one of Greta's favorite drinks, and Greta gets right to ogling him without suspecting a thing. Why are you like this, Greta? Are you stupid? Do you think I'm stupid? Does Will think you're stupid? But she's already opining at the tenderness of Hot Boy's lips, so I guess I'll never get an answer. Now let's be honest, I'm criticizing certain parts of the plot when what I should be doing is evaluating the narrative, the real strength of the book. I can forgive the mistakes from other parts of the story because Greta is so likable in the realm inside her first-person head, and her casual finesse with the English language trumps any mistakes made elsewhere, right? A first-person narrator is a special challenge in writing fiction because seeing the story directly from the protagonist's point of view requires some investment into the character's personality. The reader will be spending a lot of time in the main character's head, so that head should be thoughtful, observant, full of charm, grounded, and generally pleasing to the literary eye. So, Greta. She has a few red marks on her narration, with the major ones being random capitalization for emphasis, frequent sentence fragments, including at least one instance of "I can't even," and her descriptions of things usually being run-on clauses stapled together with several ands. This might be fine, even interesting, if she were otherwise eloquent, clever, or full of good ideas, but she isn't, and so she doesn't really have a defense for her quirky grammar. One Amazon reviewer attempted to defend this style with a positive spin by praising its syntax with its meaningful fragments and polysyndetons, which is one doozy of a word to use instead of bad grammar. I will skip over the fact that this review was written by user Beaver High School, that it suggests that the book is a great novel for any English class, and the fact that Wilhite is an English teacher at an undisclosed high school, and just say that I have to disagree. Artfully breaking the rules of English may be a neat way to add some contrariness to prose, but there is an intermediate step to it. You have to convince the reader that the mistakes aren't just because you're bad at writing, because if your reader cannot distinguish between what's unconventional and what's just plain bad, it's much more likely that it's just plain bad. Oh hey, look at that. We've arrived at the end of the review. Check Me Out is just plain bad, and will leave you wondering why any publisher thought it would be a good idea to print and put on a shelf. If you find yourself drawn in by the cute cover, as apparently many Amazon reviewers did, remember you can search for Check Me Out at Amazon, Goodreads, or Deseret Book and stare at it for as long as you like without having to buy all the other pieces of paper underneath it. Another literary adventure completed. Join the Mormon romance novel book review next time as we read Lies That Jane Austen Told Me by Julie Wright. If you liked the video, subscribe to Mormon romance novel book review with your parents' permission, or just scream the name of the channel at the top of your lungs. See you in July.